Ladies and gentlemen, this interview is brought to you by Burn Up Coaching and the 21-Day Challenge. So if you are someone who's been plateaued, you've been stuck spinning your wheels, and you're trying to figure out what it's going to take so that you can succeed, well, the 21-Day Challenge might be a perfect fit for you. If you're ready for the intensity, if you're ready to dial in your daily habits, your rituals, get crystal clear on your goal and what you want to accomplish, and then have the support, daily check-ins and accountability, as well as weekly deep dive calls where we'll uncover the self-sabotaging beliefs, patterns, behaviors, subconscious stuff that really doesn't work for you, then 21-Day Challenge is a awesome avenue for you to do that. If you're interested in getting to your next 21-day goal, crushing it, rocking it, and getting the support that you need, the clarity to fulfill on your dreams, send me a message, get in contact with me, and let me know you're interested in the 21-Day Challenge. This interview is also brought to you by our iTunes review of the week, and for this one, it's by Yogi Boo. Yogi Boo says, genuine and transformational. Chris has a gift for asking the right questions and a style that motivates and makes me feel great. He is living into his work and sharing it in a meaningful way that will inspire you to take big leaps. I highly recommend it. So Yogi Boo, thank you so much for sharing that. And if you want to get shouted out on a future episode, go leave us a review. You can do that by going to beyourgps.com/iTunes and leaving us a review there, searching Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self through iTunes, or searching Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self through Facebook, and you can leave us a review there as well. We always appreciate it. Thank you in advance for doing that. Now for the woman of the hour. Brianna is the creator of the 1 Year Project. She's an 8-figure entrepreneur with multiple successful exits, and she's researcher of the science of success. She's going to rock the house right now, so get excited, get ready, and if you have any questions for her, be sure to ask them. Brianna, you ready to rock this? She's ready. Awesome. Boom. You are now live on Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on today. We're going to have a lot of fun.
It.
Of course. So I know you are the type of person who likes to go 0 to 60 real fast. You are a driver, a builder, creator. And so I want to know, like, how has this mindset of going from stuck or stopped or, having challenges, whatever it might be, to where you want to go to your goal as quickly as possible, how has that mindset played a part in your life?
I think it's the foundation of how I've gotten to where I am in life. So growing up, I didn't have very many opportunities. We were very poor, but I always had in my mind this game plan that there's somewhere else I want to be, and I'm going to figure out how to get there.
Yes.
And that's something that I've carried forward in taking action daily. And if you take action daily, all of a sudden the impossible becomes possible, and it becomes possible very quickly.
Wow. So it's that 0 to 60 is like, okay, action and go and drive, build, create with a goal, with proper thinking.
Yeah, sure. For me, there's always been a game plan. There's always like a grand scheme or a master plan. And then I work my life to that, I'll give a good example of it. Back when I was a server and I knew I have to get out of this. I was a college dropout, I was a server, and I knew I was meant for more, but what was I going to do? So I identified that the industry where a lot of college dropouts succeed was in technology, because people are more open to young people, and they're more open to young people without degrees. So I applied to 100 jobs at 100 different tech companies a day for 100 days.
Wow.
That was my entire goal. And I ended up getting a job and going from being a server to 6 figures within 6 months. So my eye was always on a single prize, and that made it very, very easy. I had the plan on how I was going to achieve it, and it all lined up and it all made sense. So then it was a matter of just applying to those 100 jobs every day.
Damn, that is incredible. So I love that we're already diving in, and we can tell that you're eating, sleeping, breathing, living this mentality of just building. So let's get into a little bit more about what the 1 Year Project is. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So the 1 Year Project was kind of birthed out of my own experience. So obviously kind of growing up very poor and not having very many opportunities, I ended up getting to a point to where I was a PhD researcher. I had built and sold multiple companies. I was running an 8-figure company. I had all these things happening at the same time. And I just woke up one day and I wasn't happy. I traveled the world. I had the companies, I had the cars, I had the right family. I had everything I'd ever wanted, but I wasn't happy. And so I had to ask myself one of the most essential questions I've ever asked myself, which is, how did I set all of my goals and achieve all my goals and still end up unhappy, unfulfilled, and feeling unsuccessful. So I identified that maybe I'd set the wrong goals, right? Maybe I'd set goals that were never designed to make me happy, successful, and fulfilled. So that was where I started. And I remember creating a PowerPoint that was almost like a vision board. And I titled it Brianna Zajicek's Life. And I just brain dumped in there everything I could potentially brain dump in there about the kind of life I wanted to live and who I was and all sorts of things. I woke my husband up in the middle of the night and I said, look, he said, what are you doing? Like, what's that? It's my life. He said, that's a crappy PowerPoint. Like, what are you talking about? And the question I asked him was, I said, give me 1 year. And he's like, give me 1 year. Like, you have all the time, all the freedom, all the finances. You can do anything you want. So for some reason, I needed the permission for 1 year to do things that seemed crazy and to really chase what made me happy and what I think I was destined to be versus who I thought I wanted to be. And those are two very, very different people. So that's how it started. Part of it was that, being a researcher, I developed an algorithm to predict if entrepreneurs would be successful or not. Wow. So I had gotten deep into the cognitive science of how do successful people think. And what I realized, one of the things that frustrated me is, academia is a very slow moving community. And, they'll find the answer to something, they'll put it in an academic journal, and then only the people who actually write in those journals will ever read it and will ever have access to this answer, this essential answer. So I said, okay, how do we take this knowledge that we have, this data that we have, and turn it into action? Because what about the person who wants to be successful and we have the answer to be successful and they're never going to see it, they're never going to know how to implement it. So I developed a 1-year program to implement the science of success on your life and to completely, massively transform your life in just 1 year. And it's just taken off rapidly. We've had tons of people do it, and I'm super excited about where it's going.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's so incredible, and I love the whole premise of it. It's like in 1 year, how much can your life really change if you give yourself this context, this perspective, this new look at reality. Okay, what has happened up until now?
Well, I think it's also like permission. Like you can try anything for a year. Like what's going to happen at the end of the year? You're still gonna nothing's gonna change that much that you couldn't go back to your old life. But could you just do this trial and try things differently and see what happens?
Damn, that's beautiful. And I'm sure we're going to get into specifically what we can change, how to set those goals, how to set ourselves up for success in that 1 year. But before we get there, I want to dive back into your journey. You mentioned a couple different things that you had achieved, going from server to 6 figures, creating an 8-figure company. Tell us about some of those experiences a little bit more in detail, and what were some of the challenges and wisdom that you picked up along the way?
Sure. So I told you guys a little bit about going from a server to 6 figures. So I'm going to dive into like the next rapid transformation that happened after that. One of the things you'll notice is that like my entire life has been full of rapid transformations, and it's what I'm naturally talented at. So I guess that's why now I'm destined to share that with other people. But when I look at this path of, okay, I was a server and I got a job at a tech company as an admin assistant. So how did I make $40 million in 18 months? Right? Like that's a good question to ask. So I was a server. I got a job as an admin assistant. When I got the job, when I went in for the interview, I was scared because I had applied to every opening in this company. So I didn't know which job I was actually being interviewed for. And I didn't want to say like, oh, I've applied to all 8 job openings you have, which one are you interviewed for, right? Like that wouldn't sound too good. So I get into the office with the CEO. And I didn't know what I was going to be interviewed for. So I thought, okay, how can I figure out something about him to add value? So I started asking him questions and getting to know him more. And I found out that, he recently made all this money and he was trying to find ways to invest it and all sorts of things. So I started giving him stock and real estate tips. Okay. So I'm giving him $1 million tech CEO stock and real estate tips because I actually already owned a house even as a server. So that's another interesting story. But I already had a rental property and all sorts of things. So, I started giving him all this advice, and I left there knowing that I had the job, but not knowing what job it was. So I show up on day one, and his assistant was showing me around the office and introducing me to people. And just made, a comment like she's here to change some things. She's a fellow grad, blah, blah, blah. So I get back to my desk and I find out what I'm actually doing is booking flights and hotels for technology consultant. That was my job, and to collect a timesheet. So I'm a timesheet collector, and I'm the flight booker, and I'm like, okay, but I know I can do more, and I think he trusts me to do more. So I didn't even knock. I walked in his office and I sat down. And I said, I'm going to be the best travel booker you have, and the best timesheet collector you have. But what problems does the company have? Like, where are you struggling? Where is it stuck? And I got him to tell me everything that was wrong with the company. And I would work 10 to 12 hours a day on my timesheet collection and travel booking. And then I would ask the director of every department to stay after one day. And I would spend usually until midnight or 1 a.m. sitting with them, going through everything in the department, all their metrics, all their numbers, all their employees. And I would turn around every department one by one by one. And that's how I went from being the admin assistant to the vice president of the company, was because I went in and I said, what problems you have, I'll solve them. I never asked, am I going to get paid overtime for staying these extra hours? I never asked, am I going to get a promotion? I never thought, what's in it for me? I never thought it's bullshit that I'm working this long and this hard. I thought I have value to add, and it's my duty to add it.
Yeah.
And I had this just trust in knowing that if I do so, then good things will come. So that was kind of always my mindset. Even when I was a server, but I was kind of running the restaurant because I came in and I figured out that they needed more help. And so I just dove in and I did the best I could do. And a lot of people want to talk about taking value before giving value. And I think that that's something that's never even crossed my mind. I know it's going to come back to me tenfold, and that's just how I operate.
Wow, that's incredible. So when did you learn that lesson? Can you remember as a kid any specific instances or growing up, young adult, where like you demonstrated that, or you like got that proof to yourself, and in your subconscious, your mind, you said, this is how I'm going to operate?
I'm not sure it was a lesson I learned. I know for a lot of people, it's a lesson they learn.
Right.
I think for me, maybe it was a little bit more innate. Which is why I might be more leaning towards that just naturally. So yeah, I think it was more innate than a learned lesson.
Awesome. Did your family have that mentality? Like, is that where?
My family was very poor, so we didn't have running water. We didn't have power.
Wow.
In fact, if you need to use a restroom, you would wait till the neighbors fall asleep and you take a mop bucket and you would go in the middle of the night without trying to wake up their dogs, and you'd fill up a bucket full of water. Like it was, and this is in America. Like this is the craziest thing I've ever heard of, and no one knew what was happening. And so, around the same time, my dad had a head injury, my mom developed a disease, and my younger brother had to have open heart surgery. So at around 8 years old, I was figuring out like, okay, who's going to get firewood to heat the house? Wow. And where am I going to get groceries? And who's going to go to the hospital and take my brother? Like all this around 8 years old. So I think solving problems came from my background of having been exposed to so many problems so young that I always had to step up to the plate and solve problems that I wasn't technically qualified for. So I never had that mindset of I'm not qualified for this, I'm not trained for this. Like at 8 years old, no one trains you to pay the bills. No one trains you to be a mother to my little brother, but that was what was required. And I think we're all capable of much more than we recognize.
So this is perfect. I love this because I know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who feel like they want to be more motivated, and they might listen to you and say, Brianna, you're on fire, you're crushing it, and you had this awesome, this like, I wouldn't say awesome, but this upbringing, this, you know, when you were young that had you set up to be a hard charger, so to speak, to be a problem solver, to be a creator. How do we get that mentality and that way of being and shift our subconscious beliefs to be able to be like that, to produce those kinds of results?
So yeah, I've you know, what's funny is I've noticed people who come from more privileged backgrounds have more trouble with this mindset. So I can see where you're going. I think when you look at it from, I think just switching from challenges to gratitude, because when I face a challenge and I don't know how we're going to eat or how we're going to heat the house, and it's 20 degrees and I'm 8 years old, I didn't have the option to sit around and wallow in how bad I've got it, because if I did that, we wouldn't have survived. I had to take action. And I think for a lot of people where they don't have to take action,
right,
then the question, they get to complain. They get to say, well, that investor didn't, see my idea, and this person screwed me over. And I didn't get severance when I left that company. They get to wallow in the problems because the problems aren't big enough for them to have to move into survival mode.
Right.
And I think if you can switch the wallowing in the problem to a gratitude of the fact that you're still surviving, and just focus on the gratitude aspect of, you know what? So what, that investor didn't take me seriously. So what, I lost my job. So what, whatever. Like, I'm still here. I'm surviving. I have food. I have a house. I have clothes. I have everything I need. What's my excuse? So one of the things is starting with gratitude. And then once you feel very grateful that you have everything, move into, okay, so what's my excuse for not reaching X, Y, Z? And that's really one of the tricks that I've done as I've become, more wealthy and more financially stable. Is, there's a lot of times where I can say, well, I don't have that email list size, and I don't have the following on Instagram. Like, we can all tell ourselves those stories, but then I look back and I think about, I switched to a gratitude mindset of what am I grateful for right now? And at the end of it, and I say, well, what's my fucking excuse? I have none, right? I have no excuse. Because look at the resources I've already been endowed with. So now let me move into action. So it's kind of three parts. It's switching to gratitude, moving to a question of what's my excuse, and then moving from, I'm not going to sit in excuses, I'm going to take action. That's like the little tricks that I've developed for myself. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. That definitely helped. And I think the more that we study this information of how people like you, Brianna, get to where you have gotten, and the other successful people and billionaires and millionaires modeling, learning from these people, hiring coaches, hiring mentors, the faster we will be able to break through our own stuff. So this is awesome. I love how we're discussing this. I'm happy to
be a part of it, to share.
Yes.
Everything I can.
Yes. Okay. So let's keep moving forward along the journey. You went from server to 6 figures to, being the vice president of the company. What happened after that?
After that, I got to the point, like I think a lot of entrepreneurs get, where I said, okay, why am I making someone else successful? Right? Because, and that was really the question that I asked myself. So I quit and started my own company. It got acquired before I even launched it. It was a blessing because I had no freaking clue what I was doing. So that was what I did. And after that, I kind of had this lull of, now what? Because the thing I'd made money doing wasn't the thing I wanted to do moving forward. And I think a lot of us get in that position. Like, we either work doing something we don't love, but it pays bills and pays us, handsomely, or we build a company that's not aligned with who we are, and then we feel trapped by our success. So I was kind of in that situation to where I didn't want to build another one of those companies. And I stayed in that for a while, and because I stayed in that mindset, I didn't use the talents, the gifts, and the things that I had to really do anything. Just kind of sat around and sat with myself for a while. And then I went back and I helped another company do it again. And then it came back to me like, wait, Brianna, you're doing this again. You're making someone else rich and successful instead of yourself. So I got to a point where I had to accept that all of the knowledge I have, all of the gifts I've been given, are meant to be fully used. And there is no choosing between, I'm going to do this thing that doesn't feel like my main thing or my end goal thing versus on the path to the end goal. Because what ended up happening was, the second that I decided I was going to build the same type of company that I already knew how to build, that I was resistant to building, I built it. I made a lot of money. I was probably working 3 hours a week, and I was taking home, a ton of money. And so working 3 hours a week and taking home over 6 figures in a month, that gave me the fuel that I needed to go out and screw up on building all these new things. It fueled my path forward, but I was resistant to it for so long because I didn't want to be that entrepreneur. I didn't want to build that company, right? I didn't want to use that old stuff that I learned. And I think that if you look at everything that you've been through as a gift, like the skills I developed to build that company and to make that $40 million, that was a gift. And the path I went through to work for that company was a gift. And taking all that and say, okay, well, it's my responsibility to leverage the gifts that I have and just follow the path forward. I could have never imagined that, because I was used to working 100 or 120 hours a week, that I would have ended up building a company where I was working 3 hours a week, and I would have had all this extra money to then go and do the things I love. But I just had to follow that. I was given what I was given for a reason, and it was my duty to use it, and that it would work itself out. And that was kind of the approach I took. And then that company ended up fueling me being able to do a ton of other things that really lit me up, and was a blessing.
Awesome. Amazing. I love it. I love hearing the passion and how the transformation happened.
Yes.
So let's move into the 1 year project, and
Sure.
and you told us a little bit about it, but what you're creating with that. I know you have a podcast, and I know you have a community and all this stuff that you're building. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and why you're doing it with the 1 year project.
So my goal is to take people who have potential. And I think most people who have a greater potential, they know it. You can feel it inside of yourself. Like, potential is energy that's looking to exert itself from a physics standpoint. And so you can feel that kind of energy inside yourself, that you're meant for more, and all these sorts of things. I meet people every day who have that potential, who have that energy, who have that knowing, and they're unable to actualize it. So one of the questions I asked in my research is, what differentiates people who spend their whole life trying to reach their potential and from the people who actually reach their potential? And that is kind of one of the core premises behind the 1 year project, is to identify people who have more potential and give them the framework to actually actualize that potential and activate it and start acting on it within 1 year. And so rapidly transforming your life in 1 year is completely possible, because I've done it I'm 28 years old, so let's say I've done it at least 20 times by now. So that's something that I'm very, very passionate about. My goal is to start a movement of people who capitalize on their potential and to transform their life and business in just 1 year. So my goal is for everyone to decide, I'm starting my 1 year project, and to say, I'm going from X to X in just 1 year, and then to chart their paths to getting there. So I'm going from, whatever you're going to best-selling author in 1 year. I'm going from this to that in 1 year, right? I'm going from working for someone else 9 to 5 to earning 6 figures in my own side business in 1 year. So to really decide what is that thing that you're going to be doing. It could be, I'm going from, stuck here to traveling the world in just 1 year. Who knows? And then I think we could probably dive into the matrix of success a little bit. So, it starts off as a loose vision. Who do you want to hang out with? How do you want to spend your time each day is a huge one for me. When I write a vision for myself, I put in there, well, how do I want to spend my time Monday through Friday? Well, I think 9 to 12, I want to do this. And then 12 to 8, I want to do this. I really just map out, like, what does my ideal week look like? And then I say, okay, one of the other questions I always ask myself is, if I want to be a best-selling author, well, what do best-selling authors do? They read and they write and they have a way with words. So what habits could I take on to support that? What affirmations could I take on to support that? So really immersing yourself into this and becoming it. So I go from creating this vision that I have, and I have a blog on it if anybody wants to check that out, creating a vision statement, and then identifying the best goal to turn that vision into reality. And that's where I think a lot of people struggle, because you want to be a best-selling author, and then you want the podcast, and then you want the 50 million people on Instagram, and then you want the email list, and then you want this 6-figure program that you're launching, and you can't physically work on all of those and reach success on them at one time. It's not going to happen. And so when I get to goals, I narrow down to a focus goal, and I like to choose what I call a tipping point goal, which is a single goal that if you accomplish this one goal, it will tip the favor in your direction for all of your other goals, right?
Wow.
So if I get an email list of 100,000 people, that's going to tip in my favor my ability to have the best-selling book. That's going to tip in my favor my ability to grow my Instagram, or like whatever that really looks like. It could be opposite. So selecting a single goal for the year, a single transformation is important. So you go from, if this is a quadrant, you go from vision, you turn your vision into goals, and then you come down here and you turn your goals into a plan. And that plan is the blueprint that you're going to be following. It says, okay, here's the days I've got. And if I capitalize every single day, what would that look like? Now, a lot of people say, okay, there's no way I can work on my goal every day. I break it down into a blueprint, so to speak, where every single day you're taking one action that can be done in 1 hour or less. So that's one of my big things. If it's one action that can be done in 1 hour or less, then you have zero excuse. And that's really just how I've always focused is you take your goal, you break it into a plan. These are 90-day plans. You execute on it, get it done. And then the last quadrant is the action, because you've actually got to wake up every day and take this action. So you have a vision, you turn your vision into goals, you turn your goals into a plan, and you turn your plan into action. And that's really the simplest framework to achieve anything and to achieve it quickly. And I think when you actually lay it out like that, what you end up is, instead of waking up every day with this to-do list of like, I'm gonna go live on Facebook and I need to write some content for my emails, I should probably post to Instagram, oh, I should work on that book I'm working on, I should record a video for the course that I'm planning on launching, right? Instead of waking up with that to-do list, you wake up and you say, this is my one thing, and I know that it's gonna actually, like, it's gonna tip the scales. Like, at the end of the day, I'm gonna be one step closer. And I think a lot of times you have this huge to-do list and you tick things off, and at the end of the day, you don't know if you're any closer to making that 7 figures. You don't know if you're any closer to being that best-selling author. But when you have a plan and you've aligned every single critical action per day with the one for the next day and the next day and the next day, you can get to a point to where you know you're tipping the scales and it's just one action. And that is where your focus goes, your energy goes, everything goes. And then, like, let's say your goal is to becoming a best-selling author. You know, you might have affirmations every day that support that, saying like, I have a way with words. I'm a great storyteller, right? So you might have affirmations like that. And then you might have the habit of, I'm going to read 500 words a day and I'm going to write 500 words a day. You know, and just something that simple takes you from being somebody who says they're going to write a best-selling book to now you are a writer because you're writing every day. Right. And I think sometimes we very much overcomplicate things. I spoke to someone the other day and I was helping them design their 90-day blueprint and what did it really look like. And they had a software as a service company, and they were working on these massive like video campaigns that were going to cost tens of thousands of dollars. And they also were going to work on some Facebook ads. Like, they had all these moving parts, and they're like, this is going to make me successful because this is what successful businesses had. When we broke it down, they needed 4 customers a day. I said, if you need 4 customers a day, you could literally talk to 25 people a day over like social media, or, you know, just randomly meeting like, if you identify the right places to find the right people, you could just talk to 25 people a day, and like in a single hour, talk to 25 people, and, you know, spend 2 or 3 minutes on each person, and you could hit that goal. And you're over here overcomplicating things. And I think one of the keys to my success has always been simple. Because when I came into this technology company, I couldn't code. I didn't have the MBA. I didn't have anything, but I could find I could look at things simply and use common sense. And so if I walked into a recruiting department and they weren't recruiting enough people, I could say, okay, well, how many resumes have you found? Okay, well, how many have you called? And then, okay, well, how many got on the first call? And then you can identify something so simple. One of the things I identified for that particular challenge was that the reason why they weren't recruiting enough people was from the moment they found the resume to the moment they extended the offer was on average 45 days. Anyone decent is going to get hired in 45 days. Right. So they would do things like, oh, yeah, we're going to have a technical interview for you. Let's set that up for, you know, a Thursday and a half from now. And you know, the timelines, all they had to do is shorten things, right? And I think sometimes we come into this thinking that the complicated is what works. And so we never evaluate it with just a fresh pair of eyes from a simple standpoint. Like, okay, if I want to be a writer, maybe I should just write every day. You know? Never actually think that, right? Instead, we think, well, I should probably, you know, get some PR, and I should probably, like, we think of all these complicated, fancy things. And I think that you'll know when it's time to be fancy because you'll already have had such a level of success, and the foundation will be laid that it won't be hard for you to get PR. It won't be hard for you to hire a $10,000 videographer, because when you actually need those things, you already have the 1,000-person list or the this or the that just from doing the simple things. So a lot of what I do is helping people stop overcomplicating things. One of my big things that I've been into recently is that you don't need more info and you don't need more advice. Because I know, especially as an online entrepreneur, you can come online and you can get inundated. Well, I need Facebook ads, and I need a funnel, and I need an email list, and I need a chat bot, and I need this, and I need that. Next thing you know, you've bought like 10 courses and you have like 3 coaches, and you know, you're not any further right now than you were 90 days ago. And in fact, because you see all these potential, all these things, you can't identify what's the thing you should work on. And there's this overwhelm because you're trying to do everything. So I try to take people out from what I call consuming to creating, because there comes a time when you've read enough books, you've listened to enough podcasts, you've taken enough courses, you've hired enough coaches. You need to take action. You need to actually trust yourself and stop looking for the answers outside. And I think identifying when you're at that point so you can move from consuming answers to creating answers is pivotal for a lot of people, so that you can remove yourself from a state of overwhelm and move into simplicity.
Boom. I love it. I love it. We covered a lot there. That was some gold. Yeah. So let's go back to the process, the quadrants, turning your vision into goals, your goals into a plan, and your plan into action. I love that it's so straightforward. So, wherever anyone is at with their process, whether it's a vision, you just have a dream and you don't have anything really tangible in it, the next thing to do is to turn it into goals, turn it into measurable goals, to turn it into something that makes sense.
Turn it into goals, you select the one you're going to go after, and then you turn that into a 90-day plan, and then you take action on it every day.
Exactly. So it's clear, it's focused, and then you take action every day to move yourself towards.
I have a visual. I can see if I can show you guys.
Yeah.
On my whiteboard here, it's like a million visuals back. So we will. Okay, so I think I have it here. But under vision, the keys to the vision are clarity and a growth mindset, which you guys you have to have a clear vision that's detailed. And you have to actually believe that it's going to happen. That's really the growth thing, that you can change and that it is going to happen. When you turn your vision into goals, you need to make sure that you have a single focus and that you have accountability to actually accomplish those goals. And part of that accountability is making sure your goals aren't dependent on anyone else. Yeah. So a lot of times we create goals that are dependent on other people, making sure that's not the case. And you move into the plan, and the plan has to be simple, which I think I mentioned, and detailed. So that there's no reason why you can't do it. So one of the things I do with my 90-day blueprints is that if you have a thing of like, okay, I'm going to reach out to 20 people per day and talk about my software. Where are you going to find those people? Who is the right person to talk to? And what are you going to say to them? So in this 90-day blueprint, I'd actually put the details of, here is the people I'm going to talk to. Here's where I'm going to go to find them. And here is the conversation I'm going to have with them. And so that there, you wake up and you have no excuse to sit around and think like, oh, where am I going to find these people, or talk to the wrong people, or all those sorts of things. As I move into the final quadrant, sorry, I think my kid colored on it. With the action, momentum is huge, because momentum is really, once you start taking action, like a force in motion stays in motion. Yeah. So I have all these quantum and physics kind of references, but I love it. Stays in motion. So if you begin to take action, you create a snowball of action, and then you continue that forward. So keep momentum at all costs. You can't afford to take a day off, because then you're going to wallow in it, you're going to feel guilty, you're going to get off track, you're going to wonder if this is working, and then boom, you're just not going to continue. And the very last one is problem solving, knowing how to overcome challenges when they occur so that you stay in taking action. And that's really that's the matrix of success from a visual standpoint.
I love it. So we do have a lot of like spiritual people who tune into the podcast. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on like self-care and taking that time, and the time to take care of ourselves and nourish ourselves, as well as stay on track and keep that momentum? How do we balance that?
So when I started my 1-year project, I think I mentioned that one of the things I'd identified is maybe I'd set the wrong goals. So then I had to ask myself the question of, well, how did I set the wrong goals? And I thought maybe I set the wrong goals because I set goals that weren't aligned with who I really was. And then I asked myself the question, well, why would I set goals that weren't aligned with who I was? And then I said, do I know who I am? So, I went down this philosophical, kind of logical philosophical rabbit hole, so to speak. And then I said, okay, what would it look like if I figured out who I was? So one of my first goals when I started my 1-year project is I'm going to figure out who I am, because before I figure out who I am, which I thought I knew, of course I thought I knew, right? We all do. But until I figure that out, I can't align anything with it. And if something isn't aligned with who I am, it's never going to make me feel the way I want to feel. So let's get that foundation straight. So that was the first thing I did. And that looked like a ton of self-care. That looked like, I have this really funny story is, I decided we were all moving to Miami. That was one of the first decisions I made. So we packed up all of our stuff. We went to Miami. We got this house. It was a block from the beach. It was in this little kind of downtownish community where we could walk to everything. We had a pool. I mean, it was the life. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I did was just buy a bike because I was like, I remember I liked riding bikes as a kid. So I just buy a bike. And then I find an office. Now, this time I'd sold all of my companies. I have nothing to do all day. Wow. So I would ride my bike to my office and I would just sit at my office and I wouldn't know what I was supposed to do. So I'd be like, okay, I'm going to meditate. So I'd sit in my office. Everybody probably call us crazy because I have this glass office. I just sit there and meditate. And then I would do affirmations. And then I'd open up my journal and I'd say like, okay, universe, like, what do you have for me? Mm-hmm. And I would just write. I mean, it might be 5 or 10 pages. And I followed the principle of like following my happy. So right. What makes me feel good? Like if I feel happy riding my bike to an office and sitting there and opening my journal and writing in it for 3 hours, and that's what I'm going to do. I didn't know where any of it was leading. Right. But at the end of it, I felt very, very in tune with myself, which helped me to redefine what a new vision for myself would look like so that I could begin setting those goals. And that was really the foundation of where I started. I started with, I'm going to do what sounds exciting to me every day. So, after that journaling session, I might just go to hang out at the pool, or I might go sit by the beach, or I might, bike down to a bridge, like who knows? Mm-hmm. But I really just started with getting back to the foundation of more of what I would consider like a natural way of living, which is interesting because I'm a very like plot, scheme, plan, everything kind mm-hmm. of person. So to have no agenda was crazy for me. But I thought like, okay, kids are happy, kids feel successful, kids feel everything. So what if I lived like a child for a while? What if I just followed what made me happy? What if I bought some bubbles and blew them off from the rooftop? Would that look cool? So all these things, I made a commitment to do the things that made me feel good every day. And that really is at the core of self-care.
Wow, that's beautiful. So you saw that you weren't happy with who you were being and becoming. So you said, okay, let's pause. Let's take some time to nurture, to figure that out, to craft and mold and allow yourself to receive the downloads, divine or universal downloads, so that you can figure out what those next steps are. And then once you did that, then you could execute effectively. Yeah. So kind of circling back to the question, how you knew you were able to do that self-care is because you weren't centered in yourself and who you were.
Right.
You weren't sure who you were.
I everything I ever wanted, and I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel successful, even though I had all these outward signs of success, and I didn't feel fulfilled. And so I knew that all of those came from an internal place, not an external place. But I also knew that I thought that these goals would give that to me. And so the goals themselves, like I was ending up in companies that I didn't love. I was ending up in with the wrong advisors that I didn't like all these different sorts of things led me to believe that I just didn't know myself well enough, or else I would never put myself in that position. Because I'll give a great example. When I moved into academia, I thought it was going to be an answer to some things, because I thought, okay, I need to surround myself with more intelligent people. If you're the smartest in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I also thought I just want somebody to believe in me, because it's always just been me. I've never had a mentor, never had an advisor. And with a PhD, you always have an advisor. And then I also thought okay, I'm going to have 7 years to work on my life's work, and that's going to be awesome. And I neglected to see the other side of things, which was that I like to move fast paced. Academia is very slow. I'm very blunt and don't, kiss up to a lot of people. And it's very much about doing that. And so, I came in there and I barreled through like a train and no one knew what to do with me. And I felt like an outcast. And that took me back to feeling like an outcast when I was a child. And I didn't even want to show up to these people. And I actually found people who believed in me way less than I believed in myself. And then that pissed me off as well. So and nothing worked, right? Nothing worked. I'm not a very structured person in general. And there's very rigid and structured. And so, it was a train wreck, but I couldn't have seen that because I hadn't identified with the fullness of who I was. And if I would have known that would have never worked. Right. But because I wasn't in tune with myself enough, I couldn't have seen that. And that was the case with a lot of different things.
How can our listener right now tap into more of who they are and like know that they are enough, know their purpose? How do they get to that point? What will change or be different in their life?
I think a lot of times there's a book I'm going to recommend here, and I don't usually recommend books, even though I read a lot. There's a book called The Surrender Experiment, and it's by Michael Singer, and it's awesome, and it's one of these things. For me in particular, I've spent so much of my life trying to control the outcome. And even with the 1-year project, that happens to a certain extent, right? Like I'm deciding an outcome and I'm achieving it. I'm helping other people achieve a particular outcome. So it's still very much me. But the foundation of making sure that it's the right person, the right goal is the foundation. And I think one of the things that I've had to figure out is how to listen. And that's very difficult for, like, we all feel like we're deciding and our mind is thinking and we come up with that goal and we come up with that idea. And I think through meditation, I've learned to listen to what the universe or outside or God or whatever you believe in says to me. So it's very different to be the one always like asking God for things or asking the universe for things. It's very different to be the vessel and to sit here with nothing in your mind and say, what would you have me do? And I think that the more you can tune into that energy of listening and being open and receptive to life's events. And this book explains very perfectly how to surrender to where you're being led versus always charging through the wrong path. You're going to end up down a path that's 10 times better than anything you've ever designed.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love it. And you mentioned your kid drew on your poster there earlier. I'm curious, how has family and balancing, the 1-year project and that whole mindset and philosophy, like with family and other obligations, how have you done that, and how do you advise your clients and your community to do that?
It's so interesting that you asked that, because it's a good question. Being naturally very logical and driven, and I'd say powerful in some extent.
Yes.
When I first had kids, I really struggled with identifying with the like soft, touchy, feely side of things. Because naturally, you fall down. I'm not going to kiss your boo boo. I'm like, get up, charge forward. and I think kids need that to some extent. So I think it forced me to identify with a softer side of myself, which was very necessary. But one of the most interesting parts of my story is around the same time I decided I was going to sell my company and I was going to like drop out of my PhD program. And I decided all of that around the same time. Almost a week later, my son was diagnosed with cancer. Wow. And so then it was just like, wow, like I wonder if I was brought to the decision to quit those things because my presence was so needed during that time phrase. And if I hadn't been willing to drop those things, like if everything had been going great and I hadn't been willing to drop those things, would I have been able to be as present or deal with it all? So I think, maybe I was led to that. But I mean, that actually led me down this period because it all kind of started at the same time. My 1-year project and him being sick happened around the same time. And then we decided to move to Miami, and around that same time, I had issues with my daughter's custody from moving out of state, and like everything was just kind of pouring in around the same time. But one of the biggest lessons I had to learn was being comfortable and open to different things. Like with him being sick, I had to stay home all the time. Right. I'm someone who before this would never have been able to spend more than 10 minutes home. Like it was just a place to sleep. Like I was up, I was at the coffee place, I was here, I was there, like I was go. And really it was a period of a few years of sitting in my house and like, you shouldn't really leave because you shouldn't really expose the germs, and we can't travel out of the country because that would be very, very bad for state. And it was like moving me into being home. I couldn't have done like being home 24/7. I probably would have gone crazy. But the only reason why capable of doing that was because of the spiritual foundation I started to build with this 1-year project of going deep internally. For the first time in my life, I was okay with not go. And that was a totally different experience than I'd ever really had. And I think the relationships that I've built with my children in that downtime has been very, very meaningful to me. And I think also I've developed more of a softer side and a go with the flow side versus a charge through anything side. And because I go with the flow, like I mentioned that period in Miami that I really, really love, but there came a point where we were really struggling with his insurance, and we'd had really good insurance where we were at before. And our house was just about to sell. Our old house was just about to sell. And then a hurricane came to Florida and messed up our home in Florida. And so we're back in our old house in Atlanta, and we're sleeping on it was right during the hurricane. We're sleeping on air mattresses, and all of our utilities were connected and everything, but it was just a crazy story. And I became open, and I could tell my husband and kids were just really felt at home here. And so I became open to like, are we being led back here? And so I gave up something that I was very, very much attached to and very much loved, and could follow the surrender of I'm being called somewhere else. And I think that's also something that I wouldn't have been able to do previously. I would have just like made sure I got my way.
Wow.
And so, there's so many lessons in everything, but I think parenting brings their own lessons as well.
Absolutely. In terms of associating with like bigger name people, getting your brand more credibility, what are you doing, or what are your strategies to really get around those like next level influencers to grow your brand, impact more people, reach more people?
Man, I love that question. I realized a few years ago, probably around the same time as the 1-year project, that my whole life I'd meet people and they would like give me their card or ask me to email them. I'd be at a networking event. I would never talk to those people. People would email me. I would not respond. And part of my reasoning behind that was it's like, I built every company by myself. I've never had an advisor. I've never had a coach. I've never had a mentor. So these people seemed like a hassle to me. And I just was not a very connected person, because I did everything by myself. Why would I need a distraction of someone else, right? And so that was my mindset for so long. But around, more recently, I've started to, and I've become more connective, and I've learned the lesson. But what I've realized is that I go to events all the time where I see people who are like, oh, I have a $2 million a year business, and they're giving a speech to me, and I'm in the crowd, and I think, why am I not the one giving the speeches? Or like, I can see some flaw in their logic. And then what I've come to realize is that I robbed myself of a platform that people who built and sold the dollar amount and figure and done the things I've done would have had if I would have been open to connecting with people. And so my closed offness robbed me of the influence and the platform that I maybe earned but wasn't receptive to engaging with.
Wow.
And because of that, I had to kind of, with the 1-year project, start back over. Because I didn't go to those conferences I was invited at. I didn't respond to those emails, and I didn't form those relationships. So even though I should have had a platform, I didn't, and that was my own doing. And so I had to own up to that, and I also had to be more receptive and open to connection. So I recently, this year is the first year I've ever done anything like coaching, mentoring, anything. I joined a mastermind. And when I joined this mastermind, it's full of people who are good at being influential. And I knew there was something for me to learn there, because I have always been a little bit of a lone writer. And even when it came to social media, I just didn't like social media. Social media was a hassle. I didn't want to check my phone. I don't want to post a picture. No one needs to see my food, my kids, my life, my beach house, none of it. Like nothing. Like I was a ghost. Okay.
Right.
So going from being a ghost to saying, okay, I'm ready for the spotlight has been this transition for me as well. And I joined a mastermind with a lot of influential people who have mastered the art of getting other people to care about them and getting their message out there. And what I've learned is that my platform in connecting with other people is my ability to make an impact. And so there's no way I can make an impact as a lone writer. So now I think about amassing, and I have visions of amassing hundreds of thousands of people. In fact, one of my goals is to impact 10 million people by a certain date. And that requires me to put myself out there to connect in a way that I hadn't done before.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you saw that being on your own was costing you, and you learned the lesson, and now you're making sure that you get associated with these awesome people so that you can make that maximum impact possible. Do you see any specific like joint venture types of opportunities that you're going to engage in that will make the biggest difference for you?
Yes. So one of the things that I'm doing, and it's what I consider a 5-year plan, but things have started to lead it to maybe potentially happening quicker, is that my heart is centered on starting an incubator accelerator for impoverished youth.
Wow.
And starting like co-working, co-living spaces with an accelerator built into it all over the world. So I'm thinking of taking youth aged, say 15 to 25-ish, who are still in the very formative years of their youth, and they have the ability, they're about to get the fork in the road where their path is starting to become more determined for them, and take them out of the negative environment that they're in and put them in an environment with mentors and people and all these sorts of things to help. And my goal for that isn't just to help those kids or those youth or those people, but I know that if you can take, XYZ from Compton and you can put him in this incubator and he starts $1 million company, he's going to have a heart for those people, and he's going to go back and then spread it. And so I'm really looking at more the ripple effect of, starting these incubators, accelerators all over the world, and these co-working, co-living spaces, and then those people going back into their local communities and giving back in the way that they feel called to give back. And that's really what's on my horizon at the moment, as far as things that I need a large amount of impact to be able to pull off. And I also need a large amount of collaboration to be able to pull off things like that.
That's awesome. So epic. So epic. Okay, Brianna, this has been phenomenal. And, we talked about the matrix of success. We talked about lots of different things. And I'm sure our audience wants to know how they can take that next step with you, how they can stay connected with you. What do we want them to do next? And if you want to, recap and bring it all home, we can do that too. Let's send it home.
I'm gonna hop in with what they can do next.
Okay.
So there are 4 ways really to get a hold of me. One is on Instagram at the 1 year. I'm on there every day. You can watch my stories, watch what I'm doing, watch how I'm building things. And I also announce everything I'm doing on there. 2 is I have a Facebook group, the 1 Year Project, Design Your Dream Life and Business in Just 1 Year. You can join that. Inside of that, there's a free course. And that free course is all about kind of designing your dream life and what that really looks like, and creating your own 100-day blueprint. Every Tuesday, I host a blueprint workshop, and you can get details from that over any of my social media places. But my blueprint workshop takes you from being confused into developing the vision, developing the goals, developing the plan, and really having your 90-day action plan. So that's one way that you can kick off your 1 year project. And then lastly, if you want to just learn a little bit more and you're not ready to take action yet, then I have a podcast. And on my podcast, it's the 1 Year Project podcast. It's on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, all over the place. On that podcast, what I share is a 1 year before episode, which is talking to someone 1 year before they start their 1 year project. And I help them figure out what is their goal and their 90-day blueprint live on the call.
Wow.
Every action they're going to do for the next 90 days. So that's a very interesting a thing to listen to as well, how you can take them from one goal to the next goal, figure out that it's not aligned with them, find the goal that's aligned with them, figure out what's driving them, and really develop that. The other thing I do is 1 year after, which is where I interview people who have massively transformed their life and business in 1 year, and you can hear what their journey was like, what did they have to give up, what actions did they take, how did they make that happen. And then lastly is 1 year reality, and that's you following my 1 year project, the current one that I have going on.
Wow.
And watching someone in the midst of transformation and in the midst of trying to push myself to greatness. So that is really the best ways to get a hold of me. To rein it in on a very top level, because maybe we haven't done so far, is that the 1 year project is about moving from a state of going through life and let life happen to you to getting in charge of how are you going to direct your life and your energy and your focus, and really deciding where you're going to be versus accepting where you are. and moving forward with a plan to rapidly transform your life and business in just 1 year. And that's the 1 year project. The Matrix of Success is all about the physical way that you implement that. It's based on research, it's based on science, and it's basically creating a vision and turning it into goals, selecting the goal that's most important to you and turning that into an action plan, and then taking action every day.
Awesome. Awesome. So everyone, you heard it. Definitely stay connected with Brianna. She's on fire, and follow the 1 year project. And my gosh, Brianna, you're doing such amazing things. I love hearing about your journey, about where you've come from, and it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't like what you really wanted. And then you took that time to develop yourself. And then now you're coming out with all this aligned, inspired, connected actions and projects and movements. And I'm just so excited for you to make that impact in these little kids and, you know, young teenagers' lives, you know, so that they can create their own businesses, so that they can make that impact that they want and bring it back to their community, share that wealth, that knowledge, that love, that prosperity. I love what you're about, and I fully support you, and I'm super excited to see it,
well, thank you so much for having me on the Be Your Greatest Self. I know that your work is of high service and important as well, and I'm excited that you're bringing together people who are looking to make an impact in this world. So sending a lot of love to you and your listeners. Thanks, and thank you again for having me.
Awesome. Have the best day ever. Thank you.
Yeah.